Welcome to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell with me, Simon Aitken, and
I'm Keith Eyles, and we are both independent filmmakers who enjoy discussing movies and related media. And for this tribute episode, we are pleased to be joined by a friend and fellow actor, Ben Shockley. So welcome back to the podcast, Ben.
Hello there. It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
I was almost wondering, as you could probably tell from that intro, how do I describe Ben? So obviously you've been with us before, which is always great to have you back. Although obviously in this particular case, it's obviously a sad occasion to have you back on because this episode, well, it was actually your idea, and thank you for suggesting it, but. Sadly, we lose people in the world of film and television, whether in front of or behind the camera. We lose dozens of them on a weekly basis, which is always very sad. And of course, the older we get as individuals, the more of our childhood heroes and influencers and whatever sadly pass. And of course, a few weeks back, as it will be when this gets released, we were very sad to lose Burt Reynolds. And I know, Ben, from our many conversations, that you're a massive fan of Burt, and we felt it only fitting to honour the great man with one of our Movie Heaven, Movie Hell tribute episodes. So that's what's kind of got us together for this one.
Cool.
Have I killed it there? Sorry.
No,
So, well, I mean, as we usually make these things sort of personal to our own stories, as it were, and we always start with the guests. So do you want to, as I said, Ben, I know you're a massive Burt fan. We used to talk a lot about Clint Eastwood, but often in the same breath, you would say that Burt is just as important. So, yeah, do you want to give us a bit of background on sort of how you came to discover his work and how he influenced you as an actor?
Yeah, well, I guess I discovered Burt in about 1980, I guess. So I've been a fan of his for, 38 years, pretty much.
Scary.
Yeah. In fact, The Mean Machine, one of his films from 1974, was the second VHS film I watched back in 1982 or 83, I think it was. So really from there, and not just the Smoking the Bandits, which of course I love, and the Cannonball Runs and that kind of stuff. I also really believe he was a very underrated actor, and a lot of people don't know much about his work. We're talking about someone whose career began in about 1958. So he's had pretty much a 60-year career, as starting in TV, going into movies, going back to TVs, back into movies again. So I just looked at Burt and just thought, he looks like he's having a fantastic time. And I heard a fantastic quote the other day from Whoopi Goldberg, who said, Burt just loved the business, he loved being an actor, and he loved being a movie star. And you can tell. As we know, he went through his ups and downs in his career, but he always seemed to sort of drag himself back up to the top.
Yes. Now, he was certainly a movie star in the old sense of a movie star, wasn't he? Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, and obviously a lot of people know, but he was top box office draw as an actor 5 years running, and I'm not sure if that's been surpassed or equalled. Possibly Tom Cruise, I'm not sure. But during the late 70s, early 80s, Burt was the dude, really.
No, absolutely.
So, Keith, how were you introduced to Burt Reynolds?
Again, he's someone who feels like he's always been there. But I mean, it's weird. My sort of weird Burt Reynolds connection, if you can call it that, is we're often, sounding like old farts, but talking on this podcast about old fart. There you go, it ties in. No, but we're often talking about. I think, Simon, you mentioned on the last podcast about how we only had 4 channels when we were on TV when we were kids growing up, and absolutely, grew up in the same era. There were the four color TV channels, and then obviously the big thing was the VHS home video boom, and I remember my parents got a VHS recorder stroke player when I was pretty young. And it's weird because I actually do remember the first film that we ever rented on the VHS player the day that Dad had it installed was indeed Smokey and the Bandit. And I think even though the film had been out some years, it'd probably only just been available on VHS at that point or something to rent. And I remember finding it fascinating in the fact that I was able to watch it with Mum and Dad, one evening or whatever, then go to bed. And then the next morning, which I'd never been able to do with anything I'd been watching on TV, I was able to go back, rewind it and watch it again. And I think I probably watched it about 9 times in a weekend and just absolutely loved it. So it's kind of weird. I have a sort of fondness for that particular memory in my early life, it's weird that of all the films, it was actually a Burt Reynolds film. So Smokey and the Bandit is quite an important one for me because of that. But of course, following that, I followed his career very closely as well. Not so familiar with some of his television work, but certainly his movie career through the 80s, and a lot of which were films made in the late 70s, I guess, but I watched in the 80s and through to the 90s. And then obviously, he had that sort of big resurgence after a great performance in Boogie Nights, which is a film we've talked about quite a lot on the podcast for Paul Thomas Anderson. But it's also fair to say, much as I admire the man and many of the films that I've seen, there's also quite a lot of his films, if I'm honest, that I haven't seen, because he did have such an extensive back catalogue of films. So I'm still discovering more Burt Reynolds stuff as we go. So that's kind of where I'm at. What about you, Simon?
Well, one of the first videos I remember seeing was Cannonball Run.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
And, and the Smokey and the Bandit films, they were films that if we weren't watching it on VHS, me and my family, we were watching it on TV when it was on, on ITV. And I remember growing up with those kind of films. And then sort of when I was in my teens, watching sort of, action films and more sort of 15 or 18 rated films. One of my friends had Deliverance. And I remember going around to his place and watching it. And it was, for me, the revelation of that film was to see Burt Reynolds without his moustache.
Yes.
Because
that
I had never seen him without it. Up to that point, all the films I had ever seen him in, he had, that iconic moustache.
Mm.
And, it's what made him. That's what if there's one thing about Burt Reynolds that you remember, it's the moustache and the sort of the cheeky smile and the sort of the glint in his eye and stuff. But to sort of see him in a more serious role and without the moustache was quite a revelation.
That's actually a really, really interesting point. Yes, because I'd never really thought of it that way. But you're absolutely right. The whole mustachioed, leading man thing. What was absolutely his image, which certainly through the late 70s through the 80s and whatever was the trademark thing. So that's a really good point that he also made a number of films without the mustache. But
But the thing, that wasn't the reason why we watched that film. No, I mean that film is a hard 18, and there there's all that, you know, because up to that point, never seen anything quite like that film. And but yeah, it was sort of it was just that time when I started watching, you know, me and my friends, we would compare films, and you know, we would lend each other VHSs and stuff that's been taped off TV and stuff, and that was like one of them. We used to talk about that. We used to talk about all the Arnie films.
Yes.
You know, all the Dirty Harry films. It was sort of the sort of 80s action flicks of the time, the ones that were, you know, as we was, you know, 13, 14, we still couldn't quite see at the cinema. But yeah, and also sort of later in life seeing other films of his, the more sort of adult films like City Heat and Mean Machine, which I don't know, as somebody who I gather you're a fan of Mean Machine. What did you think of the remake, The Longest Yard, with Adam Sandler?
Yeah, I bought it. I bought the movie. Nice that Burt was in it, obviously, playing a sort of a smaller role. It was all right. It was okay, I have to say. I never saw the British version, the Vinnie Jones version. I don't think I've ever got around to seeing it, but they did do one, didn't they?
They did do, yeah. Which I believe was called Mean Machine, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. I get that one amiss, to tell the truth.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I mean, you know, good on Vinnie Jones to have a film career, but I mean, he only worked well in smaller roles.
Right.
To be the lead, you know, it wasn't quite such a draw. And as I say, at this point, we already had one remake, and then there was another one. And it's,
yeah.
So, but
I mean, the thing is, I'm not a particularly a sports fan at all. But when I saw Mean Machine, you know, again, I thought, well, what a fantastic movie, and you know, his performance is excellent in it, and there's some, you know, again, some great supporting actors who also make the movie. Yeah,
it's very much in the same spirit as the Paul Newman film, Slapshot, where it's where it's that kind of,
that's the hockey, is it ice hockey or something?
Ice hockey one, where it's kind of funny, it's kind of serious, but it's also tough as well. You know, there's no sort of blows sort of taken. I mean, as today, these kind of films that were made back then would be sort of more sort of family friendly, and these were not. These were, you know, these were made for adults, and and for us kids, you know, at the time, made it even more tempting to watch. Can I just a little aside here? It's funny that like Hollywood studios now chase after 12s, you know, 12A, you know, you got to get to a family audience, when really they should be making them a bit harder, because, you know, I imagine kids today want to see that kind of stuff. They want to see the stuff that's kind of forbidden to them.
Yeah, I must admit there was something in that whole sort of VHS home video era where if I was watching, you know, because my parents were quite cool about stuff like this, and also I had a lot of mates that would get stuff, and, you know, you'd be watching like a 15 or an 18 film when technically you weren't old enough to be watching those, and there was that kind of thing with it where you sort of thought it was quite cool that you were watching Commando or something when you weren't old enough, or you know, something like that. So I know exactly what you mean. Also,
that was an era where, for me, I would go and see a movie because the actor was in it. I'd be going, I'll go and see the new Clint Eastwood, or go and see the new Burt Reynolds, or whatever. And for me, that doesn't necessarily happen these days. I mean, okay, I like Bruce Willis. I'll see the odd, you know, Bruce Willis film. I'll see the odd Sly Stallone film or whatever, or the Harrison Ford. But I won't be like the old days. Must go and see everything they've done. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even those actors you've chosen there as examples are kind of, you know, sort of from that era, or at least the crossover, you know, from that era into this era. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, like, as you'd already mentioned, I think now, you know, the people who have that sort of pull are probably like Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks, or, maybe Jason Statham on the action side or something. But
yeah, I can think of a couple of friends already who have to see all of those films.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind. I do like Jason Statham. I must admit, I've got a bit of time for him as well.
Yeah.
And he did a remake recently, actually, of a Burt Reynolds film, because there was a film called Heat that Burt Reynolds did in the mid-'80s, and I believe Jason Statham did a remake of it. I don't know if it had the same title, but it was the same story, apparently.
Oh, really? Okay. It's interesting. Oh, I'll have to look at that.
Quickly, I've got to tell Simon that Burt Reynolds did a movie in the 90s called, you'll be excited by this, I think, called Modern Love.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Okay.
He played a colonel in it for some reason, so I've no idea. I have absolutely no idea what it's about because I haven't actually seen the film. But,
Hold on, Ben. A Burt Reynolds film that you've not seen? What's that?
To be honest, more recent films I haven't seen either. There was a time where it was either difficult to get hold of because some of these are TV movies and stuff, and some I just don't think got a release in this country. So there are a number of films of his I haven't seen.
Oh, speaking of Jason Statham, Burt Reynolds did star alongside him in a film, which I don't think anybody's going to go and rush out to see. They both appeared in The Name of the King, a dungeon scene.
I know it. I think I've seen it, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've also done, while you were talking there, I've done some digging because obviously, the immediate film that springs to mind when somebody mentions the title Heat for me is obviously Michael Mann's film. But yes, you're right. He did indeed do a film in 1986 called Heat, which was remade with Jason Statham under the name Wild Card, which I remember seeing. Yes. It was 2015. And Wild Card was all right. I mean, it was just okay. It wasn't amazing, but that was indeed an adaptation of the Burt Reynolds film Heat, which apparently was originally written by William Goldman. So wow, some
right.
So there you go, some prestige there. God, it's amazing what you learn, isn't it? You think you know loads about films, and then you've only got to start peeling away at the onion, and there's shitloads. There you go. So that's. There you go. For our Statham fans, there's a little bit of trivia. We know we have them. So excellent.
Sorry, I just sort of looking at his back catalogue here, especially during the 90s, and sort of looking at some of the films he did, and I forgot he did Cop and a Half.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's one to be proud of.
Did you see it? Have you both seen it?
No, unfortunately, I'm
not sure.
It's not as bad as it might sound. It's actually not a bad film, but unfortunately, what was happening around that time is that because of Burt Reynolds had quite bad press before then, and his films just weren't making money, so he did a whole string of films, and that was kind of one of them, and they box office wise they just kind of died really, and I believe that was before he got back into TV shortly after that. I think as he realised, he did a kind of little cameo in The Player. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, as himself, wasn't it? Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And then he kind of went back into telly with things like BL Striker. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't actually. No, I don't remember that one. But actually, looking through his filmography, this is bizarre. Apparently, he made a guest appearance in Beverly Hills 90210. Who knew? Wow. Okay.
Talking of the ups and downs, Well, we know, I guess I know at some point we're going to pick our favourite films, but we just have to sort of mention in a way that the turning point really in Burt's kind of life and career happened in 1984 with the film City Heat.
With Clint.
I guess I'm going to say.
No, absolutely. Please tell us for the listeners. Carry on.
Some are aware, I guess you guys will be, that in City Heat, obviously Clint Eastwood and Burt Reynolds are the sort of top box office actors around the time, and they were like, well, we've got to do a movie together. So they did this film called City Heat, which underwent many titles changes. It was Kansas City Jazz, I think it was originally going to be called. Then they changed the title again. They got rid of Blake Edwards, who was going to direct it, and got Richard Benjamin, I think his name is, director, who's also an actor. But I don't know if you remember, but it was literally the first day of filming. You know, they'd been waiting to work together for all these years, having met, you know, at Universal all those years ago. And Burt Reynolds gets his jaw broken in a fight scene on the first day. Yeah. And what happened was after that, as he said, he totally blames himself for how the film turned out, because he said he should have been replaced. He should have said to Clint, look, you've got to recast and get someone else in, because he was on very heavy painkillers. He'd had his jaw wired up so he couldn't eat food. They had to rewrite the script a hell of a lot, apparently. And it was later on, during sort of personal appearances, he'd start to collapse. And people, this rumour began through Hollywood that he had AIDS.
That's right, because he'd lost a lot of weight. Yeah,
that's
I remember
right.
That. Yeah.
And he said the phone stopped in an instant. He said the friends that stayed with him from that moment on were friends for life. But he said when that happened, the amount of people that never called him again, God, I don't know, he couldn't count them. And it turned out, of course, that he didn't have AIDS. But someone somewhere brought up this rumour, and it killed his career, pretty much dead for a time. Yeah, what a sad story that is. I mean, that's that's really sad. But I mean, and it's a shame, because I mean, I've kind of got, despite its production problems, which obviously I didn't know about at the time when I watched it many years ago on video, but I've kind of got a bit of a fondness for City Heat, actually, because obviously to have Clint, who I'm a big fan of, and Burt together in the film, you know, and there are some great comedy moments in it. There really are, you know, but it is a shame to think that, you know, that film and that collaboration with Clint, you know, with them being great friends and whatever, was unfortunately the thing that sort of set his career on a downward spiral is for many years, until he was able to sort of make a comeback. But that is a great shame. I mean, after that he still worked when he became fit enough, and you know, he'd make movies, but as I said, they never really sort of hit their mark. And then it wasn't until the early 90s, I think again, where he went back to TV and then ended up with 2 Emmy Awards for the show Evening Shade that he was a star of. Right. And it kind of rekindled his career again. No, I mean, there's no doubt about it. The Hollywood can be an incredibly toxic place if you get on the wrong side of the rumor mill. And I think, you know, and I think nowadays, what with social media and whatever, that's, you know, that's even more of a problem. But no, it's a shame, and you're right. He certainly had his ups and downs, because you know, right prior to that point, he was literally the person that, you know, the actor that everybody in Hollywood, whether it was movies or television, was talking about. You know, me and Simon are always talking about our sort of fondness for the TV shows that we grow up on, and I know, for example, you know, things like The Fall Guy, which I was a massive fan of as a kid, but you know, that was inspired, you know, partly by Hooper, which was one of Burt's films with him as a stuntman, and obviously the Steve McQueen's final film, which was called The Hunter, where he was a bounty hunter, and The Fall Guy was kind of one of Glenn A. Larson's sort of amalgamations of two ideas again, and you know, so Burt Reynolds' influence, because everybody wanted, you know, it to be, you know, Burt Reynolds type thing, you know, was seen everywhere, and you know, pretty amazing stuff, really.
I have a question for you guys, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking about, you know, sort of Burt Reynolds' sort of fall from grace. But were you guys aware of that when you were growing up? That period of time that Burt Reynolds had kind of fallen out of favour? Because I'm thinking about it now. When I was a kid, it just seemed that Burt Reynolds was everywhere. and it didn't seem like he'd gone away. I mean, up to the point where I remember him doing the voice in All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I was actually aware of like you said, Burt going away as such until probably the early 90s, because what seemed to happen because of the amount of filmography that he had through the 70s and 80s is, and again, to your point, you know, we didn't have as much content back then as we have nowadays. So Burt Reynolds was one of those staples, like you know, like Clint and like James Bond movies and whatever, that always seemed to be on television all the time. So yeah, it didn't seem as if he disappeared, because they would constantly be showing his movies, even if they were, you know, by that stage nearly 20 years old or whatever. There'd nearly always be something of Burt on the TV if you were flicking through one of those 4 channels, you know. So
I mean, I just remember, I mean, I guess I was aware in a way, because as I have to keep telling people, I'm about 10 years older than you guys, if not more. So yeah, around that time I do remember the whole City Heat thing, and I remember the movies he did after that, and I used to read Screen International around that sort of time when I could afford to buy it. And I used to sort of read about Burt's new films like Heat and Malone. There was another film called Rent-A-Cop, which he did with Liza Minnelli. Switching Channels with Christopher Reeve.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and Kathleen Turner, I believe, was in it. And there was another movie called Physical Evidence. I went and saw these all at the cinema, but I just remember reading about them at the time, and there seemed to be quite a negative air coming across from whoever's writing them, that these aren't the best movies that he's making, and he needs another hit. And then we talked briefly earlier about Cop and a Half, which again actually is quite good. I think that's quite a good movie myself, but I like the others as well. So I think I was, in answer to your question, Simon, I think I was aware that things weren't going well for him, and you know, he was addicted to painkillers and stuff like that at that time as well. So he wasn't going. But as he often said, you know, you really shouldn't feel sorry for me, because I really had the best time I've ever had, you know, when he talked about look back his career afterwards. And I guess we can talk a bit more about that later, about things, you know, in the aftermath of his passing and what people have said, and I guess and whatever.
Yeah. I seem to remember, it's funny how certain films stay in your memory as well. I mean, I seem to remember, again, I probably saw it some years after it actually been made, again on the whole home video thing, but I remember a movie called Stick, which I really enjoyed, which I believe he directed as well, actually. And I really enjoyed that, because I remember they had this absolutely mental stunt scene in it. I mean, this was all obviously pre-CGI and whatever, where this albino character like falls from a building firing a gun as he fell, and you know, it was like a proper stunt. And I just remember absolutely, you know, being sort of blown away by that at the time, thinking that was just like one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. You know.
Ironically, that guy was a stuntman who played the part, obviously, and he did the stunt when he without giving too much away. Well, I'm going to spoil it, I suppose. He goes off the balcony, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
But the angle looks brilliant, because you.
Well, you see his face. I mean, it's like.
Yeah. And the ironic thing is, he died a year later in something totally unconnected with making a movie. He was out in the desert on his motorbike and was killed.
Oh my Lord! Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that story, but that's kind of sad. But also kind of bizarre when you look at the stunt that he did in this, which, as I said at the time, it totally blew my mind, because I believed that this guy was falling to his death, because you could see his face and you could see he was falling, and it was obvious it wasn't like some awful rear projection thing, and obviously it was pre-CG and all that stuff. So it was like, my God, you know, this guy really did it.
His name was Dar Robertson, I believe, just for the record.
Oh, fair enough. I'll take your word for that, Ben. I know you're the expert on all this stuff.
I I read it in a book, so it must be true.
Oh, it must be. Absolutely. If it's on IMDb, it's got to be true, right?
Yeah, right.
Just looking at the poster for this, I actually remember seeing it in the video shop, but I never did rent it. But it's the image of Burt Reynolds holding the machine gun.
That's right.
That's right.
And he's standing behind
background.
what looks like he's smashed in the glass. And,
Oh, yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I was like, I remember seeing that. That was such a strong image, but I never did get to see the film.
Well, the weird thing is, and people think I've gone mad, but I have definitely seen two versions of that film. Two different versions of that film were released. I know for a fact that they reshot some stuff in it because I've just read about it recently, and they put the release date back because they shot it and they'd gone, God, this doesn't work. Well, presumably the studio looked at it and said this doesn't work, so they went back and did some reshoots. Now I've seen two versions of that film. I don't know whether they're both available. I know Sticky's available. I think you can get it somewhere, but I'd be intrigued to see if my memory is correct.
Okay, that's interesting.
It changes it quite a bit. In one of the versions I've seen it, it's more about the movie business in a way and about making a film, which is kind of odd. And then the other film is not that at all.
No, interesting, because it's based on an Elmore Leonard novel. Yeah, absolutely. But as I said, it's one of those. Oh God, when you look back, it's funny how things just stick in your memory. And no pun intended. But yeah, that was one I always kind of remembered specifically for that stunt. And also there was a joke in it. What is it? What is the last thing that enters a bug's mind when he hits the windshield?
Oh yeah.
And it's his ass. which again, when I was young, I thought that was quite amusing. But there you go.
It's the way you tell them.
Exactly. That's
yeah. You're probably right, Ben. There's probably is two versions out there. I mean, the old age-old story of studio interference rears its ugly head again. I mean, you think we'd be over it by now, but we're still seeing it. I mean, especially about a film we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Just to, I was going to say, just to get, well, hopefully the people listening will be just as intrigued. I'm just trying to find out, actually, while we're on as well, about if there is another version of Stick. You've got me kind of on a mission now, but because sometimes they have online about alternate versions. But you know what? I've looked, but I can't seem to find anything at the moment. But yeah, cool. Anyway, interesting one. But yeah. So is there anything? I was going to say it's funny how we've got onto that film, but that wasn't necessarily the one we were going to talk about.
No.
But it's quite random, actually, from his filmography. It's incredibly random.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's a film that he directed, so.
That's right. Yeah, I think that was kind of what brought my attention to it, was the fact that again, like Clint, he was one of those actors that was able to direct as well. Not sure he was necessarily as successful as Clint's been, but he had enough star power in that era to give him the opportunity to do that as well. And from what I know, those films weren't bad at all. The ones that he did direct, they were decent.
And very different from each other too, actually.
Yeah.
Right, because apparently it was Gator was his first directing film. Then was it? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a bit early. That was non-mustachioed Burt, wasn't it? Gator.
That was Moustache. That was 1976.
Oh, was it? Okay.
He did do a prequel to that in 1973 or whatever, called what was it called? White Lightning, which is the same character.
Ah, okay, yes.
And that he hasn't got a moustache in that one.
Oh, well, there you go. It was.
So you're right there. But same character, yeah.
Yeah.
But he made a really dark movie called The End in about 1978. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
Don't think I have, to be fair.
It's kind of a black comedy, but it's I don't know how to describe it really. It's kind of got Dom DeLuise is in it as well, and it's kind of about suicide really.
Okay.
But it is a very dark comedy. It is funny, but it's also bloody hell at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, well, he had a long and varied career, and you know, it's very sad that he's not with us anymore. But you know, he's certainly got some classics there to pick from anyway.
I mean, are we going to talk about what his project he was hoping to be in next and stuff like that, or do you want to do that later?
Well, we're under no set format here as such, but yeah. I mean, I guess. Well, let's get on to that. Let's do it a bit chronological, and let's get on to that maybe later. But
yeah, absolutely,
yeah. We're winging it somewhat tonight, as people listening will probably gather. But hey, sometimes they're the most fun ones. So that's all good. So Ben, I mean, obviously, I know this is almost like an impossible question for you because you love so much of his work, and rightly so. But we did sort of ask you, the only prep we did do for the show was kind of ask, as we're called sort of movie heaven, movie hell, and out of respect, we're not going to pick any hells, although we might have already mentioned a couple. But we asked you to pick what your choice, if you had to choose one Burt film to talk about as movie heaven, what would it be? So, well, what have you come up with on that side of things?
Well, I'm not going to mention some of the ones that I would have liked to have. I'm going to go for something slightly different, and I am going to say Sharkey's Machine, which is a detective movie he made in about 1981.
Yeah,
I'm just going to read a little bit. I hope you don't mind that you wrote one of his biographies. When Clint Eastwood was going to make Every Which Way But Loose, he sent me the script to read because he was a little nervous about doing comedy. I told him he was getting into my territory, and if it was a success, I'd do Dirty Harry Goes to Atlanta. When he heard about Sharkey's Machine, he sent me a telegram saying, "You weren't kidding, were you?" So in a way, Sharkey's Machine is his answer to Dirty Harry. Now, Sharkey's Machine is, I think, a really class movie. Basically, a little rundown on the synopsis, very, very briefly. Burt plays Tom Sharkey. He's a detective who's demoted to the Vice Squad after a bust that they go on goes wrong. He and his team stumble across a mob murder tied to prostitution and the government. And that's basically the basis. Now, it's not strictly action all the way. There's a lot of comedy in it. Some great character actors again. Got people like Charles Durning in there, Brian Keith, a guy called Vittorio Gassman, Earl Holliman. Rachel Ward's in it. She plays the love interest. I just think it's a really... it's just like a really interesting movie. I haven't seen it for a few years, and I really want to see it again. But it's got... I don't want to spoil it because I know, Keith, you haven't seen it yet, and I don't know whether you have, Simon.
No, I haven't seen it. No.
But there's a period in the film which when I went and saw it at the cinema, and I was watching it, and I really enjoyed the beginning of the film. It was really going brilliantly, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is really slow. There's a really slow piece in the middle of this film. All of a sudden, all hell breaks loose, and it's just amazing, an amazing slow burn of a build-up, I think. I won't go into much. I don't want to go into too many details in case you sort of guess what I'm talking about. But you'll when you see it, you'll know what I mean. But I just think everything clicked. I mean, I know when we did the Blazing Cannons podcast a while back, and we were talking about favourite films, I mentioned Dirty Harry and what a fantastic film it was. For me, this is Burt's equivalent, really.
Oh my God, which makes me want to see it even more because I mean, I'm actually kind of, I said to you when you mentioned this, and I was like, oh, I'm actually embarrassed to say, here's me hosting a movie podcast thing and always having lots to say about films and, going on like I've bloody seen everything and all this sort of thing. But despite you know, when I laugh at it, you know, I think of all the films I see with BAFTA and the London Film Festival and Fright Fest and, you know, all-nighter retro screenings at the Prince Charles and stuff like that. And you know, there are things that do slip by, and I'm actually massively embarrassed to say that you know, Sharky's Machine is one of them. And I was trying to sort of rack my brain as to why I've never seen it, because obviously it's one of those posters that at the video library and on the back of movie magazines, you know, was really iconic. It was sort of mustachioed Burt with a like a 44 Magnum or a 357 Magnum or something, and then Rachel Ward standing sexily in a doorway in a fur coat and all this sort of stuff, really iconic. And I'm like, why the fuck haven't I seen this? And I seem to remember what it was. As I mentioned earlier, my mum and dad were always really cool at letting me watch stuff before I was old enough on VHS and whatever growing up. But often what they would do is they would sort of, before sitting down as a family to watch something, sometimes they would sort of screen stuff first to make sure it was appropriate. And I think Sharky's Machine was one of those films that I seem to remember my dad thinking was slightly too violent and maybe slightly too sexual for me to see at the time. And it was one of those ones that I didn't watch at that point and then kind of never got round to watching afterwards. And it's annoying because I tried to find it to watch for this before we recorded this, and it's not on Netflix at all, which is annoying, and it's not on Amazon Prime. If you want to watch it, you've got to actually rent it through Amazon Prime, which I was perfectly willing to do, but unfortunately, what with work and life this last week, it's been like crazy busy, so I haven't actually had time to sit and do it. But the fact that you sort of describe it as you know, Burt's answer to you know, Dirty Harry, as Clint also hinted to in that passage from the book, just makes me want to see this even more, because it sounds like it's probably a Burt Reynolds film that would be right up my you know, alley of taste, you know.
Definitely. I mean, the thing is, it's you know, the comparisons with Dirty Harry, it isn't really kind of based on a Dirty Harry character, because in a way, although his character might be a loner partway through the film, you know, it's Sharky's Machine, which is definitely this group of people who he finds and gets together to try and, you know, get this kingpin, you know, who rules the area, sort of thing, through prostitution and stuff like that. But it's a real definite ensemble piece, and I guess because he directed it as well, it's an added bonus, you know.
Right. Oh, that's one of the ones he directed as well. Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
But I'm like you, you know, as we were talking earlier, it's very difficult to get hold of a lot of Burt Reynolds' work, because I guess at one stage he might have been considered out of favour or something, and a lot of films weren't reissued, I don't think. I mean, I had to get hold of, I got Sharky's about 2 years ago on a triple bill DVD, Region 1, with Hooper and Straker Ace. Bit of a weird mixture.
It is, yeah. I was going to say that's old. Okay.
Yeah, it was. Considering to me, it's a classic. Yeah, even that is quite difficult to get hold of. But of course, you can bet your ass now, a lot of his work is going to be easy to come by, because, you know, ka-ching, which is the sad thing. I mean, I remember about 2 years ago, I wrote to, I think it was coming up to his 80th birthday. I wrote to the major sort of TV, you know, BBC, ITV, whatever. I wrote to the National Film Theatre, and I said, how about doing an 80th birthday, you know, season of his films? How about that? I think out of all of them, I heard back from ITV basically saying, well, we don't have the rights to a lot of Burt Reynolds films, so we can only show like one or something. I'd love the NFT or somebody like it to actually do a retrospective of his work now, you know, and sort of show, and that's probably will.
I was going to say they might well do that now, because the BFI are great at doing seasons. But yeah.
After some, you know, as we've said before, I mean, I think Burt really knew he was loved within the business and all that kind of stuff, and knew he had fans, but you know, the outpouring in the last few weeks really has been absolutely massive. And it just makes you think, shit, if only he knew, if he knew what people thought of him before he went, you know, it's just the irony, isn't it, of the fucking business. Excuse my language.
You say that though. Burt Reynolds was doing a promotion tour for one of his last films.
Oh, yeah.
Which is called The Last Movie Star, or Dog Years. It's weird. If you look on IMDb, it says Dog Years, also known as The Last Movie Star. Which, which I hope they go with The Last Movie Star, because Dog Years sounds a bit...
No, they have.
Yeah.
I'm holding a copy of it in my hands as we speak.
Oh,
wow.
Wow, yeah.
Okay.
I've sort of been looking online, you know, doing what Keith did, trying the normal outlets, and it's not on there.
Yeah.
Yet.
Well, the thing is, it's not got a release in this country yet. I actually, I don't want to name drop, but I've actually been in touch with Adam Rifkin, who's the director.
Yeah.
And I contacted him on Facebook, and he actually got back to me. And he said it's not been released in this country yet. It might get a release in October. This was before Burt died. Mm-hmm. I got it on a Region 1, and I ended up... I didn't realise there were more different types of bloody Blu-ray. I bought it on Blu-ray, but it turns out it was the wrong kind of Blu-ray, and I can't watch it on my Blu-ray machine.
It's a Region A. Yeah.
Right. So I ended up having to get a Region 1 and watch it on my laptop in the end. But it is a fantastic little movie.
Yeah.
And a great last movie for him, literally, you know.
But my point being is that he did a lot of the chat shows and stuff, and
sure.
when he was doing, you know, talking about his career and his life and everything, and you got a real sense that he did know that people admired him and the work he did, and you know, and he still had that great sense of humor that he sort of shows throughout all the films. I mean, you know, with sort of the end credits to the Cannonball films, you just see what a laugh he was on set. I mean, the fact that it was amazing they actually got the film finished. The amount of it just looked like they couldn't just get their lines out because it was just they couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, sure.
I know, it looked like a hoot, didn't it?
Yeah.
It just, I mean, he really was a great actor at balancing that, you know, tough guy, but with the humor as well. He probably did that, you know, better than Clint and better than Sean, and you know, better than quite a lot of them in some respects of, you know, sort of balancing that very fine line sometimes, and very, very, very good. And I see, I'm just looking at some credits and stuff, because I was trying to find Sharkey's Machine, because I was trying online and everything to find it just so I could, you know, get up to speed. And I did find the trailer. I was able to watch the trailer for it, and I noticed that Street Life by Randy Crawford and the Crusaders was like the song. But ironically, that same night, I watched I'm Really Into Better Call Saul, you know, the Netflix show, the spin-off from Breaking Bad. And it was really weird because I just watched the trailer to that, and I put it on, and they had a sequence in Better Call Saul where they played Street Life by Randy Crawford and the Crusaders, and I was like, how weird is that? What weird symmetry is that? But you know.
yeah. But I mean, that song kind of got popular through the use of it on Jackie Brown in the opening credits.
Yeah, well, again, Quentin was a big fan, right, of Burt. So you know, it's not surprising. You're right that was also used, you know, in his film as well. So yeah, because of course that's like the opening song, isn't it, in Jackie Brown?
No, it's not actually.
Is it not?
It's Across 110th Street's the opening song.
Oh, okay. Wait,
Jackie,
okay, so
it's in the it's used halfway through the film. I think it's the
right.
The Rashomon sequence. You know, when you see the you know, when she steals the money, but you see it from the 3 different perspectives.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, another great one of your picks there, Simon, for movie heaven when we did Quentin, and a pick it was too.
Yeah.
But yes, folks, go back and listen to that episode. That's it's all connected, man. It's all connected. Yeah. But no, I really want to try and get hold of this. I am really psyched to watch it now. Again, I'm reading here that apparently it was released on Blu-ray, Sharky's Machine, on April 7th, 2015. But I don't know whether that was in this country or in the US. So
probably
I'll have
the US. The US. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, the one place maybe worth trying, a place that's known for its all-nighters, is the Prince Charles. I mean, maybe try and get them interested doing an all-nighter.
A Burt all-nighter, that would be great. Yeah. I remember, oh God, again, memory lane here, but I remember when I used to buy, back in the day, when I used to buy VHS box sets. Oh God, what an old git. But when I used to collect them, I had a really cool, which I'm kind of sad that I haven't got anymore, Burt Reynolds one that had 4 films. It was and it made up his face with it smiling with the mustache across the like an artist's impression of it across the spines. And I think the films were Deliverance, Smokey and the Bandit, Hooper, and what was the 4th one? It was across 4 films, and trying to remember what the 4th one was. But yeah, it was a great collection. But I got rid of all that stuff when I when I decided to take myself too seriously. But yeah,
never do that.
Never do that. What am I doing? But
I remember seeing that. Was it The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas? Do you think that was the 4th one?
Maybe that was the 4th one. I love that film
as well.
Yeah, maybe that was it. I'm trying to rack my brains. It was one. What Warner Home Video did. I had like the Lethal Weapon one and the Dirty Harry one, and they even had one for V, the TV series, and all these things. They used to have all these collections, and there was definitely a Burt one. And as I said, it used to make up the spines. Used to actually make up, as I said, his face with his mustache, kind of smiling with the glint in his eye, as you sort of described, Simon. And it's just sort of come rushing back to me while we're talking about it. So good times.
Indeed.
So anything else that's non-spoilery that you want to say about Sharky's Machine, Ben?
Not really, because I would give too much away. There's some really great set pieces in it, I think. Just what a great cast. I mean, he knew how to cast. I mean, obviously he had a casting director, but he had some great actors in that movie. I can't fault it. I just think it's a great film, and I don't want to build it up too much, Keith. And then you watch it and go, well, it was all right, but. So yeah, it'd be interesting what you both think of it if you both see it at some point.
Yeah. Well, as I said, its poster is so iconic that I feel like I've seen. I almost felt like I'd seen it because it had always been there. But no, as I said, when I was prepped, I realised no, I've never actually sat down and watched the film ever. And as I said, I find that almost embarrassing.
This is how sad I am. I actually have the movie poster from my local cinema when I went and saw it in 1981, and they let me have the poster.
Oh, wow. Blimey. It's probably worth a fortune.
Something these do.
Oh. Yes, but it was definitely one that Dad saw but didn't let me watch. I remember that. And I was kind of annoyed at the time, but he was doing it was good parenting. He was making a call on whether or not something would be suitable, and he certainly did let me see things that some people would think wouldn't be suitable. So I can't knock it at all. But that was one of the ones that got through the defence barrier, I think.
Well, I must have snuck and seen it at the cinema when I was 16 because it came out in 1981. So it's an 18 certificate. So wow. Or an X or whatever it was.
Oh, Ben, you don't want to be aging yourself on this podcast, trust me.
Shit.
Oh, dear.
Okay, so Keith, what would your pick be for Movie Heaven?
Right. Well, probably not going to be a major surprise to people who sort of know me and know my tastes. But I have to say, much as a big fan of Smokey and the Bandit and stuff like that. First film I saw on VHS, so very fond of that, and Hooper and all those sort of films. But the one that I think he absolutely kicks ass in as an actor, and I just love the film. It's from 1972, and it's John Boorman's film Deliverance, which also starred John Voight, Ned Beatty, and Ronnie Cox. Is kind of a thriller stroke. Some could call it folk horror. Hicksploitation type film, I guess you could call it. But this was one that I saw on television. So probably when I first saw it, it was probably somewhat edited from the versions that I now have on Blu-ray and whatever. But I just remember, again, being quite young and being allowed to watch this, but being just absolutely taken up by the adventure of it, the scenery, the fact that these four city guys go out into the wilderness, and they're doing things like whitewater canoeing and walking through the woods, and they've got bows and arrows, and they're doing archery, and all these kind of real manly, exciting things. But I just remember how the film kind of manipulated my feelings at a time when I was still learning about what film actually was and what it meant. And I remember being absolutely friggin' terrified by this. And even though I didn't actually understand at the time what was done to Ned Beatty's character in it, and I'm glad I did. Obviously, it would have been quite wrong if I'd understood at the time what had been done to him. But still, the fact that he was bullied, and they were mean, and they did the squeal like a pig thing and all this sort of stuff with him, bothered me. And I'm sure that was probably edited for television, and it was certainly pan and scan. So a lot of that action might have been off screen or whatever. But I remember being really friggin' disturbed by it, because I didn't like it that the slightly chubby guy, the one who wasn't the alpha male like Burt, was being picked on, and that kind of bothered me. But I kind of like the fact that Burt and the others sort of came to his defense. I mean, to an extreme in this film. but and it's interesting, because as you watch it, like as I got older and watched the film over again, and I was even lucky enough, John Boorman did a Q&A with this at the BFI shortly after I'd moved to London. So I was able to finally see it on the big screen and hear about it. But it's funny how when you watch it, as you're older and in different social climates like we have now, how it's not necessarily as black and white as it initially appeared. You suddenly realize that these city guys come to the wilderness with a huge amount of arrogance that they bring with them, and they kind of encroach on the territory of these hillbillies to a certain extent, and it's one of those films that I think works as a spine-chilling, gripping adventure film, but at the same time it does have a lot of other interesting layers and social layers, which I think in today's world you have an even slightly different viewpoint on. I don't want to sort of tell the whole thing and give away spoilers in case there's listeners who hadn't actually seen this film. But for me, in terms of plot and directorial style and performance all round, including the great Mr. Burt, I think this is a fantastic film, and yeah, it was a bit of a no-brainer for me to pick as my choice for movie heaven. So that's John Boorman's Deliverance. Check it out, guys. It's pretty frigging cool.
I actually heard a really nice story about Deliverance. And it's funny you say a nice story about Deliverance in the same sentence, but
yes, indeed.
But this shows you what Burt Reynolds was like, as a person. So John Boorman was looking to he was looking for actors to play the Rednecks, and Burt Reynolds recommended a friend of his, which he refers to as Cowboy. And the thing is, with Cowboy, he told John Boorman he can't read. And so they get him in, and John Boorman just says, "Could you read that first line?" And the guy's looking blankly at him, and Burt Reynolds goes, he says the line for him, and then his friend, Cowboy, repeats it, but does it in his own way. I think the line is, "Put your pants over there," and Cowboy went, "Put your panties down," or something like that. And they loved it. And the thing is, so because he couldn't read the script and stuff, he actually did a lot of improv, and he came up with the iconic line, "You sure got a pretty mouth."
Oh dear, yes, and isn't that just the nastiest iconic line out there? Yeah.
But the thing is that Burt Reynolds said in this interview that even up to this day, he'd be driving along and somebody would pull up next to him in the car and lean over and say that line to him.
Followed by old fart.
Old fart.
No, I mean, this is. I mean, you're right. This is non-mustachioed Burt, and it's definitely alpha male Burt in this film, isn't it? Yeah, he's the alpha male out of this group of city boys, and he was in fantastic shape when he made this film. But I mean, it's cool because the other thing about this film, I mean, what we were talking about with Stick with the stunt work, is the stunt work in this film is absolutely superb. All the whitewater rafting stuff, absolutely amazing sequences, and I just think this is one of those films again that I don't get bored of watching, and if I'm flicking and it happens to be on, I can easily get into it, and watch it. And it's like with Psycho or another number of other films, but they're ones that I can just watch any time, even though I know it kind of scene for scene, word for word. There's always something to. It's always entertaining, and there's always something to take out from it. So so that for me is and it's quite possibly the first thing I ever saw Burt Reynolds in as well, actually, because even though Smokey and the Bandit was the first VHS rental, as I said, I think I saw this on television maybe a year or two beforehand. I don't know; it's all kind of hazy back then. But I definitely saw. This was one I seem to remember. It was on BBC One, so there was no adverts or anything. But I'm sure it was edited for language and content. And I seem to remember, I mean, obviously this is something that nearly all broadcasters do now to cover themselves. And they do that disclaimer about it includes scenes that some people may be offended by or whatever. And I think even back then, there was some sort of announcement on the BBC prior. It said warning, it includes scenes for mature audiences or something like that. And I remember looking at Dad and he was like, "Oh, you're all right. I'll turn you away if it's anything too bad," kind of thing. So, but it's funny. It's funny the things you remember. But I love this film. So, can't. I could rave on about it all night. But as I said, I would get into total spoiler territory, and I just think that if anyone's still listening to this and haven't seen it, go see it. It's much more available than his other films, actually. The Deliverance is something that's fairly easy to come by. Most places sell it. It's certainly available online, and to stream or buy. There's this, and it's often shown on television as well. It's often like on the BBC late night or something. So it's quite accessible. It's one of the more accessible Burt films at the moment, I think, in the sort of public domain.
Yeah.
So, what about you then, Simon?
I'm gonna pick two, actually, because I think it's well.
You didn't tell me and Ben that we could pick two, did you, Simon?
Well,
Deliverance would have been my other one.
I'm picking two because both films are ensemble films, which really Burt was one of the stars, and so my picks would be Cannonball Run,
Brilliant,
and Boogie Nights.
Oh wow! Okay,
yeah,
two good picks indeed. Yes,
Cannonball Run for me is a total nostalgia pick. It's a film I saw a lot when I was a kid. That and the second film as well. Sometimes both films kind of bleed into each other because you're sort of like, which one was Jaws in, and which I know Jackie Chan was in both of them, but which one was it when he was with Jaws? And
I find that with those as well. I think I saw them back to back, perhaps. Actually,
which one's Roger Moore in, and which one's but the both of them are great and really enjoyable, and sort of Burt Reynolds is kind of the linchpin of this. He is the guy we're following, the guy we're hoping is going to win, but he is surrounded by all these other celebrities or wacky characters who are all playing it for fun. I mean, the fact that Roger Moore was sending himself up as James Bond was just a great laugh.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously Roger Moore, we've done our own tribute episode on as well. But the fact that what I particularly liked was the fact that this was the film where Roger Moore gets to drive the Aston Martin DB5, and it's cool that it's Roger, getting to drive what was always known as Sean's car. So that was very cool.
And I have to say, he held, Burt Reynolds really held his own. The fact that he had Dom DeLuise with him, sort of, scene stealing all the time. I mean, Captain Chaos. Dun, dun, dun! I'm just laughing to think at the end when they lose the race because Captain Chaos has to go and save a cat from the sea or something. And he tears the thing and he's like, "You're not Captain Chaos." And he's like, I don't want to be Captain Chaos anymore. I want to be Captain America. It's just like...
Now, it's a laugh. And I mean, what was great about this as well was all the... yes, it had very colourful characters and stuff, which was great, and the comedy was great, but also all of the car stuff was awesome, wasn't it? You had cool cars and great car scenes and whatever in these films. But I like you, Simon, I have a trouble distinguishing which one is which out of the two films, because I'm not sure how long afterwards the sequel came around, but it was fairly close, wasn't it? I think it was, within a year or two.
Something like that. It might be 3 years.
Yeah.
There was 2 years. 1981 was the original Cannonball Run, and 1983 was the second one.
Oh, right. Okay.
Is this
fair enough.
Or am I looking at the wrong one? 1984. Sorry. Smokey and the Bandit Part 3 came out in 1983.
Yeah, well, the less said about that, the better. Yeah.
Well, you mean
cameo only, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that was.
Bless him, but.
Yeah. I mean, as it was said in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Smokey is the bandit.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the Cannonball Run films are still a lot of fun. Up to this day as well. I mean,
Definitely.
it's been a while since I've seen them. They don't get much play on TV, but for a time there, they used to get a lot of play.
Yeah.
And I think in the second one, because they were dressed up as like a army general with
That's
a driver,
right.
and they pick up the two nuns, which one of them is Shirley MacLaine, and the other one went on to be his future co-star in a TV series in the 90s.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in Evening Shade with him, I believe.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, that was
wow.
kind of, it's funny how these things kind of work out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With my second pick, Boogie Nights, it's just a great film, and it's such a kind of understated part, really, for Burt Reynolds, because he is not the star of it. He is playing the sort of a father figure, the guy who's sort of keeping this band of misfits together, and trying to sort of make a living out of all this. I mean, the whole bit when he's going on about we'll never shoot on videotape, it'll always be film, and then of course making the switch when he realizes that you can't make money from film anymore. Everybody just wants a videotape.
Yeah, kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, it was it was good to see him in a part where, I mean, I think up to that point I only really, if I thought of Burt Reynolds, I always thought of him in sort of the more comedy roles. Outside Deliverance, I hadn't really seen his other sort of dramatic roles, where he's playing it straight. So for me, that was it was a bit of a revelation to see him, that he could play a character, and he wasn't, so reliant on the sort of the smile and the, the raising the eyebrow and the twinkle in the eye and stuff, and just, play a character and play it really well.
Yeah. I was going to say, he got critical acclaim for this as well, which and rightly so. I mean, it's a great film. Again, it's been one of our picks, hasn't it, when we've talked about Paul Thomas Anderson. But I can't anything but agree with you really on this. It's a great performance, and Burt is definitely part of the ensemble, but a key part of the ensemble. It works great.
Well, that is the nice thing about Boogie Nights, is that nobody really is left out of the ensemble. There isn't that one person who doesn't really get much of a storyline. Everybody's sort of well covered. Everybody has a story arc. They all have like a sort of equal billing in that film, which is a really good mark of a great filmmaker, because how many films we've seen where it has been an ensemble cast, but they do kind of, some of the characters get sidelined, or you never find out kind of what the end of their story is. At least with Boogie Nights, you get to sort of to see all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great screenplay. It's a really well written and paced movie. Absolutely, it really works. Ben, from your side as a sort of mega fan, any thoughts or comments on Simon's picks there, or any other honourable mentions that you want to flag up?
No, I have to agree. Cannonball Run is one of my sort of favourite films as well. Also Boogie Nights, because as you say, it's a bit of a revelation because it's a different sort of role. But definitely with Cannonball, it's one of those films you can probably watch any kind of weekend. And obviously love the outtakes. Love the outtakes on Smokey 2 as well, of course. But no, just a lot of fun. I mean, I have seen Cannonball Run 2 more recently. They did show it on one of the other channels quite regularly, in fact. And again, it's not as great as Cannonball, but I have to say,
it's still fun.
it grows on you. You know, you're watching it, you go, do you know what? Look at the bloody cast he's got. I mean, he's got Frank Sinatra in it, for fuck's sake.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, some of the usual suspects, and even other people. You know, other famous people. Mary Lou Henner, I think, is the actress we were trying to remember who was the other actress.
Yes.
In the car. No, again, great choices, and obviously Deliverance as well. I mean, I could have picked any of those. You know, the only reason I picked Shark is because it was one that maybe not so many people sort of knew about.
Embarrassingly so, yes.
Yeah. It's like, but it's like, you know, one of his quotes. He used to be self-deprecating, wasn't he, about himself, and one of them was, you know, in fact, I think Clint Eastwood, after Burt passed, he sort of used the quote on Twitter, Burt used to say, the sort of movies that I make are the ones that they show on airplanes and in prison, so you can't leave. You know? But, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the things Burt was really good at as well was the whole breaking the fourth wall and, you know, looking at the camera. I mean, he was an absolute master at that, you know, because he'd do it without actually kind of ruining the film as a result of it, you know, because that's a really tough balance to do. You know, the minute you break the fourth wall, you know, you're destroying the suspension of disbelief. But there was something about his charisma and just the way that he'd do those things that you kind of went along. It's almost like you knew it was Burt playing the character, and because you liked Burt, you automatically liked the character.
Well, you're kind of in on the joke, aren't you? I mean, there's a famous scene from Smokey and the Bandit where he's being chased at one point. One of the many times he's been chased, obviously, and he drives around and behind this building, and the car slows down, stops. Don't know if you remember. Yeah. He's looking down. He looks straight in the camera, does his smile, looks away and drives off.
Pulls away, yeah.
Goes back to Laurel and Hardy and people like that who kind of, you know, Oliver Hardy used to do that a lot. And I'm pretty sure it's some sort of homage to him that kind of instead of, as you say, putting you off your stroke of watching the film, it kind of brings you into it in a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wasn't a method actor by any means, was he? But you know, he was an out and out movie star. And again, you know, we talk about influence. That scene that you're describing there from Smokey and the Bandit, I am sure that Magnum PI, you know, the bit where Tom Selleck looks at the camera and smiles and pulls away in the Ferrari. I am sure that was absolutely inspired by Burt in, you know, right down to the moustache.
Yeah. I mean, if I could just add here, I mean, you know, Burt Reynolds, you know, it wasn't just his movies, obviously, and his TV. I mean, he did some great chat show stuff, you know, with some of the greats. He also had this thing called the Burt Reynolds Dinner Theatre in the late 70s, which was almost like a repertory theatre, where lots of Hollywood actors would come and be in plays that they wouldn't necessarily get the chance to be in. People like Martin Sheen and Elliot Gould and Ned Beatty and people like that. And then around the same time, he started this Burt Reynolds Institute for Film and Theatre. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
yes,
it's about classes, and people come and do acting classes. And one of the big things before he passed, he would do a one-on-one. You could have an acting workshop with Burt Reynolds, pretty much.
Wow, imagine that.
Obviously, but things like that, you know, and he's you know, he did shows in prisons and stuff that they filmed, like chat shows and stuff. I mean, this is all coming out on YouTube now, loads of it. But it's just, I don't know how long you guys want to, you know, have the show go for, but I would like to say a little bit more in a minute. But sorry, I don't want to take over, so please say stuff.
No. You carry on, mate. It's kind of you know, it's good to have somebody on that you know has as much knowledge and information about Burt as you do. So you know, we love it when we get you know, experts on a particular thing on to chat with us, because
I don't know whether I'm an expert, but
oh, come on, don't play yourself
I just
down.
wanted to add
you know,
that it's such a shame that in 2 weeks' time, pretty much from when he died, he was due to start shooting his part in Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yes.
playing the character George Spann. Now, apparently, I just found out today he'd actually taken part in the table script read in June with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously. And he was apparently really looking forward to the experience. And his agent said something along the lines that Reynolds had received several movie offers just before his death, and negotiations were underway for multiple film roles that he was going to be taking in the next year or two.
Oh.
At the time of his passing. And I don't know whether people remember, but Burt had a heart bypass in about 2010.
Okay.
He was ill about 2010. He just found out by accident, really, that he had these problems with his arteries, and they gave him a bypass. And his agent remembers him saying to him at the time, I don't know how long I've got to be around, but I just want to be proud of what I've done as I walk off into the sunset. And he says, I can tell you that after the last movie star movie, he was completely fulfilled. It's just a nice thing to hear.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that is nice to hear.
I'm getting a bit emotional.
Sure.
I have to say, I did actually shed a tear or two when I heard about Burt, and I'm not sure if there's any other actors I've done that for.
No, I know what you mean. And well, I mean,
let's try and lift it.
While we're on, yeah, no, I mean, while we're on and we're talking about Burt, we should also mention. Well, I mean, you and I, Ben, we were, I think, incredibly fortunate to actually get to go see him be interviewed in person. And when did you say that was? You scared me with how far back that was.
December 2015.
Oh my God. Right. Where the fuck is the time gone? Shit. But I mean, that was great, because he did an interview with The Guardian. It was The Guardian, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was really cool to kind of, because we were quite near the front, and it was just really cool to be in the same room and just hear him tell these stories, you know, from his perspective, and talk about like Clint and his relationship with Clint, and you know, his rise and fall and his resurgence and all of that stuff. It was just really, really. I feel kind of honoured that we got to be in that room, and we got to see that interview. I'm really. It's one of those things that I'm really pleased I didn't hesitate and actually did, rather than be saying now, oh, I wish I'd gone and seen him, you know, when he was there, because I've done that with so many people. Yeah. So I'm glad in this case I actually took the bull by the horns and did it, and it was fascinating, wasn't it? It was a fascinating.
Yeah. He's, as I said earlier, you know, he's one actor I never ever thought I'd ever see in the flesh, and you know, as you said, I was absolutely chuffed when I think I found out completely by mistake that he was going to be in London. Being interviewed by this lady called Hadley Freeman, I believe her name was.
That's right. Well, you told me. I've got you to thank, because you were the one who told me about it and said, do you fancy going? And I was like, yeah, let's do it, you know, and I'm really glad we did.
Me too. And we got the free book. I mean, Burt was actually giving away his free autobiography as well, which was excellent. Yes,
no, absolutely. It was. We were very fortunate to have been in that situation. And there's a lot of heroes, whether they've been sort of in front or behind the camera over the years, that have done various Q&As, and I thought, oh, I'll go to that next time, and then sadly they pass, and you think, oh shit, I really wish I'd gone and seen that now. So very sad that Burt's passed, but you know, I'm as I said, I feel quite honoured that I got to to go and see that. And you know, I'm actually embarrassed, stroking ashamed at how many of his films, looking at his filmography, that I actually still haven't seen. I mean, I've seen quite a few of them, and most of them I've seen on multiple occasions, you know, many times. But as I said, you know, things just like Sharkey's Machine, which is a classic there, not having ever seen that. You know, and there's a lot. I don't think I've seen that film Heat that you were talking about either. I'm pretty certain I haven't seen that one.
Well, I just wanted to just quickly, I'd like to sort of mention just about 5 movies or something that I would recommend for people to have a look at if they're up for watching some Burt they hadn't seen.
Do it. Yes.
Could I?
No, I mean that's what this podcast is about.
Okay.
Ben, it's the whole. Hopefully, we're reaching people that, you know, they'll listen to this and be somewhat inspired to maybe go and watch some of these films that they haven't, me included. So go for it.
Well, there's The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, great Western, which he did. The Man Who Loved Women, 1983 film. There's WW and the Dixie Dance Kings, which probably no one has heard of, but it is a really fun movie, obviously pre-Smokey, but it's again one of those what I'd call a good old boy movie. Lucky Lady, which was a great movie set in the 20s with him and Liza Minnelli and Gene Hackman. That was 75. And also in 1975, a police movie called Hustle, which is also great, with Catherine Deneuve.
See, I haven't seen that.
One really weird one I'll just mention. I could mention loads, but I won't. There's a movie he made in 1989 called Breaking In. Ever heard of it?
No.
Okay, directed by Bill Forsyth, who directed Local Hero and Gregory's Girl.
Oh yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, written by John Sayles, I believe. It's just a movie about he's like an aging safecracker type thing, and he gets this young guy under his wing to sort of teach him the ropes and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a real kind of character. Again, if you look at it, you'll go, wow, that's a real character. Again, a real character sort of role. But again, because at that time he wasn't on a lot of people's radars, it was, again, I think it was one of those films that was missed, really.
Oh, okay. Right. When was that made?
1989.
Oh, okay. Well, Breaking In. Yeah, okay.
But, you know, all I'd say is, and I'll shut up, is for people to have a look at the IMDb, go and check his work out and randomly pick some stuff and you know, see what you think. He's you know, there's more, as I said, I believe there's more to him than the good old boy, you know, that we know and love, you know.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, all actors only wish to have a long and varied career, don't they? And you know, I'm sure there's dozens of things that he'd have liked to have tried out that were different to what he did, but at the same time, he's still got, what is it, like something like 189 acting credits. So that's not a bad innings as well, you know. So
yeah,
but it's a real shame that you know, this film with Quentin is not going to happen with him now. That's a real shame, because that would have been awesome.
I'd like to see, but I don't think they'll do, because it might change the whole pace of the film, is if they could do a little homage to him in it, where they show a clip of him in something on the TV during a scene or something, or they do a scene where they do CGI and someone has a scene with him. I mean, anything's possible.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Hey, well, if it's Quentin, I'm sure he'll try and, you know, put it. If there's some way they can have a reference, he's the man to do it. You know,
or a dedication at the least, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Here's a question for you, Ben. Did Burt Reynolds do any singing? Is there any songs with Burt Reynolds?
And you know what? I've got the album on vinyl.
Well, so you might get an audio cameo from Burt Reynolds then in the new film. You might get a song.
What's that?
You might get an audio cameo in.
You never know.
You know, Tarantino, he loves his obscure music.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, he did a whole album. Check it out. I don't know if it's still available. But yeah, I've got an original version of it. It's from I think the late or mid 70s anyway.
Yeah, I've just looked it up. It's 1973, and it's an album called "Ask Me What I Am."
That's right. But he also sang a song for the Smoking the Bandit 2 soundtrack.
He did, yes.
Called
yes,
"Let's Do Something Cheap and Superficial," which is actually on the album too, which I also have, obviously.
But is it as good as Clint's singing?
Well, that's a duet I'd love to have heard.
Oh dear, yeah. Imagine that.
Well, do you know what? I don't think Clint was that bad.
No.
I mean, if Lee Marvin can get a number one song with Wandering Star, well, you know.
Well, yeah.
But he's classic. I mean, I love Wandering Star as a song. In fact, I think Count Your Wagons a damn film.
Of course you do. Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, that would have been funny, wouldn't it? Duet with Clint and Burt. Yeah, there's something.
Does anybody have any final words to say?
Well, I mean, you know, sad as it is that we have to do these sort of tribute episodes, I sort of like the fact that we do get to remember, you know, some of our heroes that are no longer with us. And obviously, you know, there are so many that we could literally do this every week for somebody, but at the same time, you know, when Ben happened to mention this, and I just thought, yeah, that would be a great idea. Obviously, we did one for Roger Moore last year, and I think the previous year we did one for Christopher Lee, didn't we? So, you know, there are certain icons that you know, we talk a lot about their movies throughout, you know, the hundreds of episodes that we've had, and you know, it's good to talk about Burt, and sadly missed, but a man who had a good career. Yes, it had its low points, which were depressing for him, but he also had massive success, and you know, and a legacy to leave behind here. So that's all I've got to say. What about you, Ben?
Well, pretty much everything you said. Gone but not forgotten. Definitely an icon. I think people now will discover more about him now. I would definitely recommend The Last Movie Star as a movie to watch, and I'd also recommend A Bunch of Amateurs, which is a film he made a few years ago, which was actually the Royal Film that year. Great cast. Have you seen it, guys?
No.
No, I haven't.
I remember hearing about it.
Well, he plays this like aging Hollywood star called Jefferson Steele. He's like an action hero, and he's on the ropes in his career. And his agent gets an invite, he thinks, to play King Lear at Stratford-upon-Avon. What it turns out, it's called Stratford St John, and it's a very small amateur theatre company. So he turns up, and
sorry,
to play
brilliant.
King Lear, and of course he's not best pleased. But it's a really good cast, and definitely worth a watch too. But
yeah,
bless Burt.
Yeah,
bless him. Absolutely. What about you, Simon? Any final words?
Well,
on Burt?
You know, it's you know, another sort of childhood hero is gone. Somebody who I used to watch on TV a lot, and you know, it's always sad to see him go, but he also had a very long life. He had a very good career. He's made a lot of films, which I realise now I have to go back and sort of plug those holes that I've got that I've not seen. You know, we've still got a few films coming out with him in it. You know, if you look at IMDb, there's still a couple of films after the Last Movie Star to come out, and so we've still got a bit more of Burt to look forward to. And you know, he's somebody who's not going to go away. He's not going to be forgotten anytime soon. His films are still going to be on TV and still going to be shown, and and that was his sort of gift to us all, to, the sort of gift of comedy and just being, overall just a great human being.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of said, I may not be the best actor in the world, but I am the best Burt Reynolds in the world.
Hey, there you go.
And I think that's a great line to finish on.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. So Ben,
I don't know, I got it right. Take two. No.
So we always like to give our guest an opportunity to, while you're on, to mention any work or any projects that you've got out there. And I know, obviously, we've had you on to talk about one of these. So if you want to say a bit about it and where people can find it, and anything else going on, that would be great.
Well, I guess you're talking about the Blazing Cannons.
I am.
Yeah, a buddy spoof cop movie. Well, we've got a trailer online to that on YouTube. We've also recently acquired a worldwide distribution deal for the film with a company called ITN. We're not quite sure when the film would officially be released as such. We know that Germany have either bought it or interested, so that means they've got to dub us all into German, which should be fun to watch. That's that. We're hoping to have another screening of it in London in December, but that's not definite. But if we are, then I'll let people know. I'm working on I'm just started acting in another feature film, which I started shooting last weekend in someone else's film, which I can't tell too much about because they don't want any spoilers, and the title they don't want out there, so I can't really say anything about that. It's not a big movie, but it's an indie film, and I'm very excited about it. It's a great script and great cast.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Okay.
Thank you. Apart from that, bugger all.
Well, that's not strictly true. Is it, Ben?
No, I suppose not. Still looking for an agent. Also, Rebecca Gold, of course, which is the web series that myself and Keith are involved in, directed by Ian Diaz, who, incidentally, was the first person that told me about Bert passing by texting me.
Oh, right. Okay.
Thanks for the heads up, Ian, on that one. But yeah, looking forward to the release of Rebecca Gold on, I think, the 1st of October. Is that right?
1st of October, I believe. In the meantime, if you put Rebecca Gold web series into Google, there is a YouTube page with a trailer and some short prequel short films to go with it. And obviously, I know Ian, we'll have more on this in upcoming episodes. But prior to its release, Ian is just trying to get as many likes and subscribers to the YouTube page as possible. So anyone listening to this that hasn't done that yet, please check out Rebecca Gold web series. It's also got a lot of presence on Facebook and all the social media outlets. And hopefully I'm looking forward to seeing it, because even though I'm involved in it, there's a lot of the film I'm not involved in. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing the series. And we are being told 1st of October. So by the time this episode airs, it'll be pretty soon, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And where can people find your other work, Keith?
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I've pretty much done it all, haven't I? Okay. I mean, for other bits and pieces, if you put British Eyles, that's EYLES, into YouTube, you can find some short films there that I've written, produced and directed, and acted in one of them as well. And any other credits of mine are listed on IMDb. And what about you, Simon? I know yours links into this as well, doesn't it?
Well, you can find my work, as always, on independentrunnings.com. You can also check out the trailer for Modern Love, which doesn't... You don't see Ben in it, but you do hear his voice.
That's enough. No, I'm looking forward to seeing it, actually. Really.
Yeah, it's coming along. It's
Cool.
we're it's getting closer to being finished. I mean, it's I'm excited because every day we're just getting closer and closer to it to being done. So
Yeah.
I mean, fingers crossed it will be finished before the end of the year. So
Cool.
I'm looking forward to showing people the film and and getting it out there, and also sort of then moving on to the next project because there is other stuff I want to do.
Can I quickly mention Kaleidoscope Man, which is another film I've got coming out, directed by Simon Cox, and I play sort of a cameo sort of role in it. Well, not cameo, it's just a role in it. I'm trying to big myself up there, sorry. Yes, I played a cameo in that film, yes.
No, that's cool.
And also, I suppose I better mention this as well.
It never ends.
It is. It's the podcast where we just plug ourselves. But no, Ben and I also, we've acted together in quite a lot of stuff. But we acted together in one of Mike Tack's short films called Judge, which I don't know whether that's actually. I think it's still doing the festival thing, so I don't know whether that's actually out there to see at the moment. But Apocalyptic Conservatory is where you find Mike Tack's work, and I mean, hey, let's spread the word while we're here, right?
Exactly, exactly. And as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and all good podcast providers. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And please leave us a rating and review. It all helps. So, bringing this podcast to an end, I'd just like to thank Ben for coming on.
Thank you.
And for suggesting that we do this. It's been a lot of fun, even though it's kind of like the saddest of times. And I hope that you will join us for the next episode of Movie Heaven, Movie Hell.